Hi class, today we are going to talk about Alexander the Great, and I say that with quotes, one last time, and how he influenced Hellenistic culture. So we said Alexander the Great, took rule at 20, he led an expedition through the Middle East, conquered Persia, but now we're really going to talk about what that affected and who he is as a person. So our learning goal and guided questions, we actually have two today. First one, how successful was Alexander in achieving his goals? And then our second one is going to be, how did Greek culture spread during the Hellenistic era? You'll see these again, so don't worry. Moving on. So, Hellenistic culture spreads. Alexander's armies spread Greek culture and values to the places they conquered. Remember, Alexander was obsessed with Greek culture, even though he was technically Macedonian. This time period is called the Hellenistic era, and this means like the Greeks. The Hellenistic era refers to when Greek culture is spreading around the Middle East. You have Persia all the way to India, down into Egypt. And we were talking about Egypt, we mentioned Alexandria, the city that Alexander named after himself. This is the largest city in the Mediterranean world at this time. It's going to have two harbors for ships to come in, and one towering lighthouse is actually a ancient world wonder. The library had the largest collections of writing in ancient times, more than 500,000 scrolls. Eventually, sadly, it's going to get burned down, and all those scrolls are going to be lost, but we will survive. We survived so far today. So, Hellenistic means, like the Greeks, it's spreading throughout this whole part of the world because of Alexander and his armies. Moving on. All right, so the Hellenistic, I don't know why it came up like that on my computer. It was so pretty. Anyways, the Hellenistic kingdoms. After Alexander died, his empire was divided into four kingdoms. So that map you worked on yesterday and that large chunk of land, it's going to get divided because his wish is obviously to keep it together, but no one's going to listen to him after he dies. So his four main generals divided into four kingdoms. You had the Egyptian kingdom there in the orange, the original Macedonian kingdom in the pink. You have the Pergamum kingdom in the purple, very small, and then you have the Seleucid kingdom, which is the bigger chunk of the four, which is going to take up the Middle East. And these are still going to carry on that Hellenistic culture and like the Greeks, and they're going to be very much so still Macedonian Greek influenced cities. Hellenistic art. So art's going to change a little bit at this time period. Greek culture is going to continue to spread, what I said, even though Alexander's dead and we're dividing up among four different kings, it's still going to spread. So these kings prefer to give jobs to Greeks. So they still only hired Greek people and Macedonians in the government. That way they wanted to keep control of their land. The Hellenistic kings also hired Greek sculptors who created thousands of statues for towns and cities. So these sculptors are going to develop new styles. They do not carve those beautiful, flawless figures to reflect beauty and harmony, but they actually began to show people more realistically and angry or sad. So that's how it's going to change a little bit during this Hellenistic time throughout the whole Middle East, Egypt, and Aegean Sea area. So we have, that's an example of a child at this time, what sculptures were like. We also have this is sad Alexander as he's dying, so it's portraying sadness. And then we have, this is when the sculptures, like without arms, start to show up. And again, not like the flawless sculpted bodies that we're used to. And this head as well. It's not really, it's showing kind of like no emotion, a little sadness in there. So that's going to be how the art looks at this time period. A lot of sculptures. So we're going to go back to our learning goal and guiding question. So how successful was Alexander in achieving his goals? Did he set out to achieve what he wanted to achieve before he died, after his 12-year march around the Middle East? And how did Greek culture still spread even though we were in Egypt, or even though we were in Persia? So it's just some things to think about. So make sure you get all the notes down and make sure you answer these guided questions. Tomorrow in class, we're going to talk about more about Alexander's character. We're going to look at some primary sources, and then you're going to do your own research on to decide what you think. Was Alexander the Great really great?